Hey everybody, we're working on section 5.3 today, graphing systems of inequalities. So find page 8 and just copy down the fill in the blank part at the top of the page. Put the video on pause, get that copied, and then we'll explain how to do the rest. All right, so the steps to graphing a system of inequalities. And first off, the system means that there's more than one. So if we have to graph more than one at the same time, first thing we need to do is make sure that they're both in y equals form so that we're able to graph them. We need to be able to see the slope and see the y-intercept and get the lines plotted correctly. We are going to graph each one as you usually do, but lightly shade each solution region. So you get the solution section either above or below the line. Lightly shade it with your pencil. I'm going to be using colors here because I don't have a pencil when I'm doing this on the screen. But for you, you just want to lightly shade each part with a pencil, and then wherever the double shading occurs, because there will be some overlapped sections, that's the part that you're going to shade darker. When you shade it darker, it's going to become clear which section you meant. And I'll try to show that as best I can on the screen with the colors. All right, so let's go through a couple examples of this. In example 8, we're already set up for both of these to be graphed because I have them in inequality format. So what we want to do is take these one at a time. I'm going to label these numbers 1 and 2 just to keep track. For inequality number 1, I'm going to start at the end of my expression here, that minus 1, plot that first on the y-axis. The minus x tells me to go down 1 unit and 1 to the right, and I'm going to keep doing that several times. This is when you lay your ruler down. Because it's got an equal to symbol within the inequality, I would make a solid line here. So when I put my line in, it's going to be a solid version. And then I'll just extend it back the other way as well. If you had a dashed line, you would still use a ruler, but then you'd make sure that you're putting dashes in as you go. All right, so is this above or below? Well, I've got a greater than symbol here, so I'm going to just shade above this line. I'll use blue for this one. I'll get a different color for the next one. All right, the second one is at minus 3. So I start there on the y-axis, going up 1 this time because this is a 1x, so it's like 1 over 1. So up 1 unit, over 1 unit, and I keep doing that, and I get that line drawn. Again, it's a solid line because, again, it's just greater than. And so that line would go like this. And extend that one too. And for this shading, it's also greater than, so that would be the section above this graph, which is up in here. So again, you'd be doing this with pencil, and so you're very lightly shading each of those sections. And what you should see is that you have double shaded this section at the top. And so that's the section that you really want to darken to make it very clear that that's the part where all the solutions fall. It needs to be the part where the solutions occur for both graphs. So anywhere in this double shaded section would count as the solution region. So to name a couple of ordered pairs, all you need to do is find a coordinate that's in that section. So I'm going to start with 0, 3. This is highly variable here. You can put a lot of different things in. 2, 6 would work. There's an infinite number of correct answers to that as long as you are up here in this double shaded section. All right, so let's look at example 2. Once again, these inequalities are in the correct format, so I don't have to worry about rearranging anything. They're ready to graph. So let's start with -4. Put a dot here. We're going to go up 1 and to the right 1 again because it's a plane X. So that's here and here and here. And this time I want to make a dash line. And that's because I don't have an equal part of that inequality. So connect this out with a dash line, and you will do the same. Remember, if you forget and you want to go back and put in dashes, you can always do so with your eraser. And let's get this one shaded correctly. It's above the line, so that's up in this section of my grid. Okay, you can try the next one. Just try it quickly now, and then you can come back and check your work. All right, so we should have +5. And this 2, if I put that over 1, I can count up 2 units and over 1. It does get a little bit cluttered here, so I definitely recommend that you shade as lightly as you can on the first one, just so that you're able to see the lines that you need to see to be able to graph the rest of it. So Got a couple of points there. This one's also going to be a dash line because of the inequality symbol. So we'll take this down this way. Use your ruler to graph as carefully as you can. And I want to go below this line. So let's see. Let me get my orange pen back. I'm going below this line. So that's all this section in here. So the double shaded section this time is this runway between the two lines. And it goes off like this. All right, so once again, I know you're not doing this with color, although you could. You could certainly graph these with two colored pencils in hand, and that might make it more evident to you. You don't have to do this in light colored pencil. If you'd like to use color, do so. Just I wouldn't use markers. Markers get really messy and really dark, so definitely not marker, but colored pencil would be a good option if you wanted to. So this definitely goes through 0, 0. I'm just going to try another one up here. Let's say 5, 6. That would work. And there's several that you could put in there as well. So the point here is that you want to graph them separately. You want to graph them completely. Don't just put the dots on the graph. Actually connect them with your ruler. Do the shading. Do it as if inequality number 1 is the only one. And then come back and do inequality 2 right after that and find the common section. If you try to do it where you just do the dots for both, it's going to get confusing. If you don't do the shading right away, it's going to get confusing. So definitely do them completely, and then you can overlap them. All right, so this is going the other way. So to write the inequalities here, I'm just going to call these numbers 1 and 2 this way. So for inequality number 1, I've got a y-intercept of 2, so it's going to end with a plus 2. I'm just going to work back to front like we did the other day. The slope here from positive 2 looks like it goes down 1 and to the right 2 to my next point. So that's negative 1/2 x. And it's the shading is below this line, and that line is solid. So that's a less than or equal to. So again, I started at the y-intercept, put that number at the end, figured out the slope, put that number next to the left with the x, and then just check the line type and the shading. All right, let's do the next one. So the next one's at negative 3. And so that one's going to end with a minus 3. And then for another point on this line, looks like we're up here. So this line's going down 3 units and to the right 1, so negative 3x, or negative 3 over 1 if you prefer. It's another solid line, but this one's shaded above. So that's y is greater than or equal to. So again, y-intercept, find another point, do the slope, put that on the x, check the line type, check the shading. All right, last example here. So I have point at 4, it looks like. So plus 4, going down 1 unit, no, down 2 units this time, and to the right 2. So that's negative 2x. And then we can say this one's dashed, and the shading is below the dashed line. So we'll go y is less than. No equal sign on this one. And the final one is a negative 1. We're going up 1 unit. We're going to the right 2. So that looks like positive 1/2 x. And this is a solid line shaded above, so greater than or equal to. So these aren't too bad. As long as you go back to front, they're not too bad to go from graph to inequality. Up in here, those can get a little more complicated just because there's a lot more going on, but once you get the hang of that, that's not too bad either. All right, so let's look at page 9. These are the pages that I'd like you to do for classwork for the rest of the period. So each one of these gives you a fact about this figure, Che Guevara, who lived back in the middle of the 1900s. So there's a brief overview of him as this historical figure, and then each of these is supposed to give you a little bit of biographical information about him. Now, all that is multiple choice, because the work you're going to do is actually on page 10. And all of these inequalities are recopied for you on page 10. So you could really do the entire thing on page 10 and then just go back to check your work to see that your answers are there. So we're going to graph each of these. We're going to shade them. And the goal is to figure out which of these 2 points, if any, are in the shaded region. Some of them are going to be just one of them. Some of them are going to be none, and some are going to be both. So you just have to graph them carefully. I'll show you how to do the first one, and you're going to do the rest. So for the first one, I start with plus 1. I go up 2 units. I go over 1. I connect this with a dashed line. And you have to be super precise on these because some of them are intentionally close to point A or point B. Now you have to know that if anything were to ever fall on a dotted line, that immediately disqualifies. It is not in the solution region if it's on a dotted line. But if it's on a solid line, it can be. If it's on a solid and a dash, like at an intersection, that doesn't count. It can't be on a dash line at all. So just keep all that in mind as you're doing these. All right, so the shading on this one, it's above because it's greater. So that's this section up here. And then I'll go to the second one. So if it was just y equals 3, I would put a dot on the 3 line. Let me get a different color, actually. Put a dot on the 3 line for the y-axis. And then we're going to move horizontally because if there's no x in the inequality, I can't cross the x-axis. It's got to go horizontally. And this time I'll use a solid line because, oh, that's not a solid line. Back that out. Okay, this is going to be a solid line because it does have that equal symbol in it. So shading for this one is below. You can see that the part that I did twice is this section in here. So I'll just darken that section. And this would be an example of A only because B, while it was in one of the shaded sections, it wasn't in the overlap shaded section. So I go back out here and the correct answer for this one was B only. Okay, some of these are fairly easy. Some of them are a little bit trickier. Just remember, if it's on a dash line, it doesn't count. And remember, you need to be precise with your ruler. Otherwise, you may miss a section there.